Okay. For those of you just joining, you are currently watching What is AI and Why the Hype? We'll get started in just a moment, letting a few people filter in. Okay, let's get started. I'm excited to introduce our speaker. And as I introduce her, I'm also going to have her answer our icebreaker question. What would you use AI to automate in your life outside of work? So, again, super excited. We have here Jan Young, founder and chief customer officer of JanYoungCX.
Hi, how are you doing? So thank you so much for having me. I do a lot of the cooking, and we're vegan, and my husband is allergic to soy, and he can't eat cilantro, and that really complicates things. So I'm constantly looking for, new recipes, and it's really hard when you're just trying to search online. And I love how AI, especially using Bing, makes it much easier. I still have to give Bing feedback because sometimes it'll still give me a curry is another thing he can't eat. So there's still some feedback I'm having to give it, but it learns. And so I'm really, really thankful for that.
Oh, I love that idea. I would definitely sign up if that was available.
It is,
Before
it
we
is. Use it. Use it now.
Before we start the session, just a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions for Jan, go ahead and open up the Zoom control bar. You'll see the Q&A functionality. So drop your questions in there for her. Okay, I'll now hand it over to Jan.
Thank you. All right. And while I get started, I have my LinkedIn ready to go. So I want everyone to put your LinkedIn in. Go and find it, go get it, put your LinkedIn. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and getting started. But this is something that we do at CS Office Hours regularly, and make certain that people are connected. And I want to be sure that we're connecting here as well. So in terms of the session today and the title, what is AI, why the hype? And I wanted to be sure that we took some time to actually look under the hood and really understand what AI is, because if you understand what it's good at and what kinds of problems it's good at solving, then you can really use the tool to your maximum benefit. And so that's what I thought would be helpful, because we have so many great ideas today about how to use it, but why and what, and how are you using it? And I do believe that we've hit this place where we are now at just the hockey stick, right? This is where it's really taking off. This is the time to pay attention and to be sure that you're getting engaged and using AI in all of its forms, because it is a transformational technology. So just briefly about myself, as you heard, I'm the founder and chief customer officer of JanYoungCX. I lead weekly CS Office Hours and a Slack community, which I can share more information with you about that at the end. I'm also working on building some courses. My expertise is on the business side, but I'm really like a moth to flame. I love emerging tech. I am OG. I've been around since .com days, and I just believe that it's always important to be on the cutting edge of tech. So I really want to be sure that by the end of this session that you'll agree with me and jump in as well. One last disclaimer is, if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you that. I'm not hallucinating like ChatGPT. So I think that's really important to also recognize, and to do as leaders, but also to recognize when tools can help us, and when maybe they're not helping us in the way that we expect or need. So setting those expectations. Okay, so I want to be sure that by the end of this, you not only have a better idea of how to help how to use AI, what it is, and reconsider kind of what you might want to do with AI once you understand it as a technology better, so that you can help your customers, help your company, and also actually there are tools being built that can actually really help your career. right? So we'll talk about all of those things. And first, though, I want to start actually with providing some context. And I know we're kind of going back when we're looking as far back as the late 18th and early 19th century, but we're in the fourth industrial revolution right now. We're in it. And I think it's helpful to have some context, especially to sort of dispel some of the fear around it. So first in the chat, I want to ask you what, in terms of steam power, what impact did steam power have on the way people lived and worked, and what types of businesses there were? What sort of thoughts do you have about steam power? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Just give it your best guess. You don't need to use ChatGPT for this. You can just give me your best idea. Steam power. Chat, come on. Transportation advancements. Thank you, Sheldon. Trains all of a sudden could go across continents. They couldn't do that before. They were using, horses and walking, literally walking across the continent, right? Before that. Also, factories. Didn't have factories before. Steam power enabled factories. There was a lot of fear around that, right? But all of this stuff changed how we worked and how we traveled, even how we could connect and where we could live. When you think about the second industrial revolution, motor engines, electricity, telecommunication, thinking about that, when we're moving from horses and walking to cars, what sort of infrastructure was created to support that? Any thoughts on that? Put it in the chat. Highways, absolutely. What about motels and hotels? Vacations even, right? When you think about it, before people could fly or drive, there wasn't a need for motels and hotels. So really expand out, when you think about industrial revolutions, the impact of it is beyond what you initially would think of when you think about infrastructure that supports all of that, right? When do you think the first computer was introduced? In which of these four industrial revolutions? Thoughts? Steam? Okay, all right. What other thoughts? So we did have analog ways to compute, right? We did have, but steam didn't necessarily impact it, but that was a great guess. Electricity, however, yes, early 20th century. Electricity had an impact because that's when you had transistors, and transistors were big. So the first computers took up rooms, right? So IBM owned it. The government owned it, right? So when you think about that, when you take a look at the late 20th century, when then we had chips, right? Chips then enabled to have laptops on a desk, where now I'm looking at you right now, right? And all of a sudden you have improvements in the interfaces in the PCs and you could have actually smaller chips made it so you could have a laptop. You could take your laptop on the go. You could use an iPad or other devices like that. Internet allowed for email instead of snail mail, right? Which is what we call it now, right? So you think about these changes. Now, mobile, when we have our phones, right? We have a computer in our hands. That makes a big difference, right? So when you think about the way that it has transformed things, did we lose jobs? Do we have fewer blacksmiths now because we are using cars instead of horses? Absolutely. But think about all of the jobs that are different that have been created, right? In the same way, jobs change. There can be fear about it, or you can embrace it and be on that cutting edge with it, right? So when you think about then the fourth industrial revolution, some of the stuff you're like robotics, well, they've had, robots in factories and that sort of thing already. So, Internet of Things. Fitbit right here, right? This is something that we already use. I refer to Siri because I'm in a G household, and if I say G out loud, my lights might shut down. But when you think about all these things that we're already in, when you think about blockchain, it's not being used very much yet, it's just crypto. But when you think about, we have been using digital money forever. It's not like you get paid with a bunch of money in a suitcase and go and put it under your bed, right? We've had digital money for some time. So all of these ways in which we're going to have more efficient and safe means of using all of this digital content that we create every day, right? We'll be digging into artificial intelligence, something that you probably haven't thought about much yet, but quantum computing, when everything goes, instead of being from digital to atomic computing, and it goes from the ones and zeros of digital, when we get to quantum computing, where you can have many states at once using, and that's also in qubits is what you'll be hearing about, then all of a sudden, when you're trying to analyze mounds and mounds of data, right, you can analyze it all at once in, simultaneously. Traffic will be much easier to work out, and because you'll have all of the routes analyzed at once. Weather will be something that will be much more accurate when you're predicting that, because all of that data that goes into that will be analyzed so that you'll be much more accurate, right? And that's what happens when you have changes like this, when we're in the fourth industrial revolution. So now I want you to think more specifically about why the hockey stick is happening for AI when it hasn't happened for some of these other things quite yet. So what's changed? You have large data sets that we were talking about, right? All of the stuff that's creating data through the internet. You have cloud. We have jobs in SaaS tech because we're using the cloud for efficient and economical computing, right? And so when you think about that, the cloud has had an impact. Advances in deep learning, where you're looking at transformer architecture, which you don't have to worry about the details of it, but you do need to understand that when there are advances like that, and vector databases you'll also hear about, when you hear about those things, what you'll understand is that this is what has enabled things like pre-trained models like ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, Claude, all of these things, right? Now, for business is going to be able to use it more easily, because either they're going to connect to the APIs of those commercial models, or, like you've probably heard of GitHub if you work in tech, Hugging Face will be sort of the GitHub of AI, right? That's how it looks like it's shaping out to be. And so when you think about the open source models that you'll be able to use to train your data is going to be key in everything we do forward. What data you're using, what data pool, the way you're training it will be sort of your advantage, right? So you want to start thinking about all of these things that are leading to the tipping point, and why AI is taking off in a hockey stick. So this is not a time to sort of sit back and say, oh, I'm not sure. This is a time to jump in. This is a time to realize, like, it is taking off. Your career will benefit if you understand AI and you know how to use it. So let's keep going. So what is AI? When you think about how it is simulating human intelligence, we've been using, why can't I think of the word right now all of a sudden, but we've been using, not analog, we've been using the way you program. We always get upset with, the word I'm looking for is the backbone of AI. And I can't think of, anyway, don't worry about it. So we've been programming as human first programming for a while. The difference is when we get to machine learning, right? When we get to machine learning now, the actual model is training itself and improving upon itself. Then when you think of deep learning is actually using artificial neural networks, right? So it can go way more complex problem solving, because it's mimicking how our own brains work. Our brains are amazing what they're able to compute. And computers are starting to use some of those same approaches, right? When you look at Gen AI or generative AI, what that's doing now is not only training itself, it's now, and it's not just predicting an answer, it's generating, right? That's why when you go to ChatGPT and you're saying, improve this email, it can generate something new, right? So that is, does anybody know which one of these initials here in the orange box, which one is ChatGPT? Is it GANs or LLM? Anybody? GANs or LLM? It's actually LLM. LLM is large language model. Thank you, Roberta. But I'm glad everyone else is giving it a try, because the large language models are what are just you're sort of training for, generating the output, right? And so you put in something and it's been trained on a bunch of data, and based upon your input, now it's outputting something new. It's generating something new, right? GANs stands for Generative Adversarial Networks. Still doesn't help. But what it really is this is deep fakes, because what it's doing is it can be deep fakes, but it's generating images, right? So this is how you can go over and say, hey, give me a logo. I want the following things, or, and here's some colors I want you to use. You can also use it in any of these things that we're doing. You can use it for bad or good. So that's where you're also seeing some deep fakes, where all of a sudden audio and visual or video images can be created, and it looks like, wow, I didn't know that Jan knew how to speak in French fluently. Well, I don't, but it was able to mimic me and have me speak in French. So that's actually a great business use, unless you have me participating in some sort of French conversation that I wouldn't normally participate in, right? So those kinds of things, right? Funny, I just came up with the French example, but anyway, you come up with your own ideas at home. So how is AI being used? We've kind of heard throughout the day, it can already, if you go to Bing, it is using the current internet. And so you can come up with travel itineraries with, all the things that are your requirements and what dates you're going to be there and all those kinds of things. And it can pull from the internet and come up with travel itineraries. The recipes that I'm pulling, right? Workouts, or what you should be making for the next week, things like that. If you only have certain things in your refrigerator and you're not sure what to make with it, you can put that in and get some various ideas back. Now, when you're using something like ChatGPT, perhaps you've heard, but it's only information going up to 2021. So that can still be pretty good for recipes, but if there's any new recipes that have been coming out in the last couple of years, you're going to miss out. So think about what all of these tools are out there and what their limitations are and what opportunities they give you, right? When you think about e-commerce, so personalized shopping, anybody use Stitch Fix? Or back in the day when you had to go to the office, maybe use Stitch Fix. So that is using AI to personalize your shopping, right? When you think about, yeah, I love it too. When you think about search, so Home Depot, I don't know if you ever have tried to find something on Home Depot, but like many types of search in the past, if you do a search and it's like, yeah, I said fan, but now you're giving me all these other fans that I don't need, because it's just giving you the most popular search. If you need a sloped ceiling fan, now, because they are using a vector database using AI, now it will return first the fans that you need for a sloped ceiling. That's the improvement they made. Now people are staying on their site longer and more likely to buy. That has then the implications for revenue, right? And it gives them an edge over someone other than Home Depot that maybe hasn't done that. When you look at medicine and science, when you literally think about how AI in the past, the machine learning AI, before it got into deep learning stuff, first got trained on Pong and chess and Go, literally. And one of the resources I have is a podcast about it. It's fantastic. But literally they used the training that they did with Go, which was more deep learning training, and then they were able to map out protein folding. Now, protein folding is literally mapping out the proteins. Proteins are the basis of any organic materials. And so when you take a look at that, they were able to then map out literally everything: people, food, plants, viruses, right? So when we got to COVID-19, they could very quickly map what the proteins were, and that's when you saw those little spiky things on a ball. That was literally the protein that you're looking at, and that helped them so quickly come up with a vaccine that would just attach to that COVID-19 protein and then be able to take it out of your system. That's literally why AI is already having an impact on things that we are impact our everyday. Right? So when you're looking at that, also when you think about it, in the past, if you needed to use AI, you would have to go and hire like a Python coder or something like that. But you're not going to do that to generate a better email. Okay, Python coder, please, like, why would you do that? But now when you have something like ChatGPT and these other things around, now when you put in improve this email, you can do it in English. You just for now, you're having to work on how to improve the prompt. And if you're paying for the subscription version of ChatGPT, there's a plugin that will help you improve your prompt. Or if you're over in CS Office Hours, we have an AI and CS channel where you can ask people like, hey, here's some prompts. Here, do you have any ideas on this? Right? Exactly, you do. You have a robot friend in your pocket at all times. And it's available on your phone, right? So when you think about that, the other thing though that you may not be thinking about is APIs and data matching, not only for the tools that you're using in your own company, because you can now get much more improved data matching and then just focus on where the problems are and clean up those areas of data when you can do that. But also APIs that can help your customers connect more easily. Say, look at Tatango. That's something that they announced a while back. They're using Jasper AI for that. But also when you just think about, I saw a tool, a new CS platform tool on Monday, where literally you can talk into it, and if you want to make any changes, you can type those in, and literally it will connect you in like 20 minutes to all of your other platforms that you need to feed in. So that sort of thing, right? So there's all of these things are enabled because now generative AI is helping you speak to these apps and platforms. And it can identify what you're saying, show you what you're saying, allow you to input new information. That is Gen AI in the mix. Already now, the way you can think about this is very different, right? So it's not just for an email, but it's these practical ways that you will improve your customers' lives, your company, your own life, all of these ways. When you're thinking about, though, how you're going to use it in your CS program, I want you to think more specifically about what's going to have the biggest priority. What's the biggest impact? Go for the biggest impact that AI can improve upon. So when you think about all the ways it can analyze data or make things improved upon, then you want to think about what's going to have the biggest impact. Scaling customer success, you don't really hear a lot about personalization at scale, but you should, and you will, because that is something that where AI can actually pull in all of the recordings, all of the emails, all the productivity, pull it in and understand for each person, when was the last time they logged in? What sort of persona is this? Did they just come back from vacation? All of these kinds of things that then it can help generate that in an email or reach out in your app, things like that. So maybe it's not quite there yet, but it will be, and you should start to imagine it and ask for it or build it yourself. Yes, we're getting pretty close here. So all of these different kinds of things, I'll let you sort of dig into it, but think about how you can already, people are improving their customer journeys by putting that into an analyzer and getting feedback. Even in ChatGPT, you can do that. When you look at next steps, yes, you want to learn the tools. Yes, you want to be curious. You are the human. Your emotional intelligence is something that AI doesn't have. That's really critical. But also, I want to call attention that you need to know your craft, right? You need to be the guide to AI. So if you're asking something, it might hallucinate if it doesn't know the answer. You have to understand, is it hallucinating? You need to be able to evaluate, is this information good or not, right? And so because of that, you need to step up. It's really critical right now. And so that's also affects all of the resources that I've added in the end. A lot of books, but it's worth it. When you look at the types of tools, the main thing I want to talk to you about is intelligent CS platforms. Increasingly, you're going to see intelligent platforms that are using AI at its core, things like Lantern and Data Plant. Also really impressive, already seeing how Catalyst and Smart Carrot have been incorporating. And of course, Matic is part of the customer intelligence category here. But let's go ahead and share the links to the slides so people have all of these things. I do want to caution folks that, it's not just garbage in, garbage out and the data limitations. You've also heard about the difference between public and private AI systems and hallucinations, but also think about ethics and if you're using it for good or bad. And then also thinking about bias. We have an article that in the resources that talk about bias. You want to think too about if the bias that has been programmed or trained because of the data pool that it's being trained on, if there's bias inherent in what you're creating with AI. Okay, really quickly, you'll see all the different resources. And also feel free, there's more resources and community at CS office hours. And this is how to connect. And now we can answer questions for about 3 minutes. Sorry about that, Bex. I knew I was going to go over.
No worries. And yeah, if we don't get to your question, don't worry. We'll pass it along to Jan so that she can answer after the session. Yeah, let's start with this one. You mentioned being aware of ethics and biases in AI. How do I guide my team in terms of how to deal with it and minimize it when using AI tools?
That's a great question. The first thing you want to be sure to do is try and have a diverse team to begin with. It's really important that you have different perspectives and different lived experiences, right? And then if you haven't diversified your team yet, then take the time to read about all these different perspectives, right? So that at least you can be more open to it, because you want to think about what am I missing, right? As a white woman, what other different perspectives, or as someone who's always worked in tech, what other perspectives am I missing? You can also do more customer interviews and think also about doing interviews with your target customer base as well. That can also help to give you some insights.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jan. And with that, we are at the end of our session. Like I mentioned before, I know there are some questions that have come through. We'll pass it along to Jan, so you will get the answers. Keep an eye out in your email. When the recording and the additional Q&A is live in our resource hub, we will let you know. Again, thank you so much, Jan. This was such an educational session for a lot of us. And thank you to everyone else for attending.
Great. Thanks a lot.